Welcome back to the 2 Months podcast. We are sponsored by Shadified Salon and Barbershop in Edmonton and also Marterloo Barbershop in Calgary. Two great companies in two different great cities. So I'm your host, Joshua Marshall, and my co-host this evening. He has got the fourth ranked best podcast out there right now in Canada, and he's in the top 50 in the U.S. He is a Colorado's for the Edmonton Oilers, and you can find him on the regional side too with Gene Principe, Craig McTavish, and all the other great guys that jump in. He's the host of Oilers Now. We got Bob Stauffer. Staff, how's it going?
Good, Josh, and you've helped us a bit understand the podcast stuff. What I've noticed is we drop at the start of each week because we don't do anything on the Saturday or Sunday because we do the show Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
and then we go up higher towards, so like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday we might be 10th to 15th, but by Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we move into the top sort of 6 or 7.
Yeah, you're
So
fourth right now. So
yeah, I know it's going good. Yeah, absolutely.
right,
And
right, right up there with Friedman and missing Kirsten.
well, they might have a few more, but
Yeah.
we'll take it any way we
You
can.
can, right? For sure. Well, let's get to the here and now with the Oilers stuff. Another great winning streak that they have. So, this is our Edmonton Oilers report, sponsored by Shadified Salon and Barbershop. Chris Knobloch is, and you're going to get ready here. You got the glasses on, so I know you got some stats you're going to bring
I
up.
do.
Knobloch sets an NHL record for first 25 games as a head coach. He's had two separate 7-game winning streaks, so that has never been done before in the National Hockey League. And that's my first question. You knew this guy very well. If I would have told you first 25 games in, he would have set a record of that Elch stature there. What would you have said to that, Stoff?
I would have said that if you look at Chris's history, Josh, he's had a tendency to have some runs, and I'm going to take you back to 2011, because during late in that season, the Saskatoon Blades had loaded up and they went out and got Braden Shen. Braden Shen was the best player at the World Juniors that year. That was the year Canada blew the 3-0 lead against the Russians in the finals against Buffalo. They'd walked the tournament. Dave Cameron went snap show on the bench. I really got upset about it because, when you're the adult in the room, you got to be the most under control. And he's just lit his kids up on the bench after the Russians scored 3 straight and they never pulled out of it. But Shen was the highest scoring player at that tournament. He was the 5th overall pick in 2009. And late in that season, Cody Eakin, Kootenay picked up Cody Eakin, and they had Braden McNabb on defense. But Saskatoon loaded up, did a huge blockbuster deal, and got Braden Shen. And the Blades were a big favorite, and they beat Kootenay 9-2 in the regular season in like it would have been late February, early March. Anyways, I'm bringing this up because maybe the best streak that Chris had was during that 2011 playoff, because they swept Saskatoon in 4 straight. Okay, and that's with the best player in junior hockey. There was no question at that time Braden Shen was the best player in junior hockey. Then they went on and played Portland in the final. And so Shen was 5th overall in 09. We're in the 2011 playoffs here. Portland had Johansson, who went 4th overall in 2010, and Niederreiter went 5th. That's 2 pretty high picks going back to one team.
Yes.
And the only game Portland won, they won in overtime. Kootenay took them out in 5. So they basically won 11 of their final 12 games. The one game they lost was in OT. Memorial Cup, Braden McNabb knocked Joey Hishin out cold and got tossed out of the next game and a half of the tournament, and Kootenay was done. But Chris pulled off 11 straight victories with an average to good WHL team. Then he goes to Erie in 12-13, okay? And he's a defensive coach at Kootenay, because Kootenay's not, the Chanels that time, Jeff Chanel owned the team. They were not a rich team. They're in Cranbrook. They're not getting the best high-end Europeans. They're certainly not getting any Americans, even though they're relatively close to the border. It's, they can't provide the inducements that some other organizations like it's like, if you look at Quebec and London and Portland, those teams have had some really good American players over the years.
Yes.
Just figure out why, right? Like there's, obviously they can recruit. But even like Edmonton and Calgary, who the WHL keeps close eyes on at all time, because Edmonton and Calgary want to be good partners in the Western League. Even they don't get the same caliber as guys as some of the other imports that come in. Kootenay, they couldn't buy skill, is what I'm saying to you. So they had to be a defensive team, but he won 11 out of 12 games in the playoffs and took his team on a wicked run. He ends up in Erie in 12-13. He's a defensive coach at Kootenay. He goes to Erie, okay? First full season in 13-14, he wins 52 games. He had a winning streak of 11, a winning streak of 6, a winning streak of 10, an undefeated streak of 7, a winning streak of 8, a playoff winning streak of 6. They lost in the third round to Guelph, who lost Edmonton in the WHL final. The next year, 14-15, Connor's last year in junior, McDavid's last year. Undefeated streak of 14, winning streak of 6, winning streak of 10, playoff winning streak of 8. They lose the OHL final to Oshawa, who won the Memorial Cup and beat Leon Draisaitl. That was in the OHL final. And then beat Draisaitl at the Memorial Cup when Leon was the MVP of the Memorial Cup. Now McDavid's gone. And this is when everybody started to think Knobloch could coach. Yeah. 15-16, he wins 52 games. Undefeated streak of 10, winning streak of 15, playoff winning streak of 6. They lose to London in round 3, who wins the Memorial Cup in Red Deer. Then in 16-17, again, he's now 2 years removed from having McDavid. Undefeated streak of 15 at the start of the year, a winning streak of 14, a playoff run of 7. They win the OHL title, wins their hosts, and beats them 4-3 in the final, right? Like, the point I'm making this with another 4 straight 50-win season, this guy seems to have runs.
Yeah.
It's just there, and I think part of it might be, Joshua, that he's even keeled. You know what I mean? And when you're even keeled, you're not adding gasoline on the fire like Dave Cameron did during that 2011 World Junior Championship. If you're not upset, if you're under control on the bench and you're never yelling at the refs, first of all, maybe you get more calls that way. I don't know.
You probably do. And obviously, your players react to that stuff too, right?
You nailed it. There's the biggest thing. So he's in the game all the time, but under control. His team, and he's got good players. And, I asked him about the streaks in Erie. You know what he said to me? I had good players. Yeah. That's the first thing he said. He goes, the streak in Kootenay might have been the most impressive just because we didn't have the same high end. Like, McDavid and Dylan Strome were in Erie together. He had Connor Brown in Erie. He had Alex DeBrincat in Erie. And so, you look at the fact that it is Knobloch with the record. He hasn't even coached 25 games, right? He's coached 23. They're 17-6. If they beat Chicago on Tuesday night, that's 2 8-game winning streaks in his first 24 games. That's unheard of.
Yes.
So I think he'd tell you it's the players. I agree. But I also think it's he's focused and specific on certain things. He doesn't worry about everything that's out of his control. And I think that because he's emotionally even keeled, I think it results in his teams being able to weather the storm when maybe they are going through a little bit of difficulty. And then he doesn't overthink it. Like, they play the same lineup. Well, we keep winning. We got to keep playing these guys.
Yeah.
We're not sitting there moving guys in and out of the lineup. They don't have a lot of extra guys to move in and out because of cap issues. So the end result is we're having a completely different tenor and tone to this than we did 6 weeks ago when I was on with you before.
Oh yeah, that was quite the rated episode too. So another thing that kind of stands out to me, Stauf, too, is usually when you see new coaches come in, some players get lost in the shuffle, and maybe because the way the cap is, it really isn't working that way. But at the end of the day, these are really good players I'm going to talk about too. And obviously, we know how much Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson loved Vincent Desharnais and James Hamlin. These guys have been, still pillars, a part of this organization since those coaches have left, and they've done a really good job, being the players they are and kind of growing into their own. Can you talk about maybe what Knobloch might see in those guys and the progression that you've seen in them since the new coaches have come in?
Well, it's a good point by you, Josh, just on Desharnais and Hamlin, right? Because they came to the organization as undrafted, let's check that, as unsigned players. Hamlin was undrafted, was contemplating going to the University of Alberta, got an American Hockey League deal. Vincent Desharnais was drafted. He's a 7th-round pick of the Oilers, but Edmonton did not sign him to a National Hockey League deal. So both guys earned their way up from AHL deals and matriculated to getting NHL deals. And that is in large part because of the currency that they bought with Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson. 100%. I would say especially Desharnais. Now, that said, I think Desharnais has taken another step in his game. The biggest concern I had with Vincent was his puck skills. And Paul Coffey, I mean, he said on my show, he said, Bob, there's two things I told the D when I came in. Number one, I want you guys sitting together in the dressing room. And number two, I want you making plays. And the Oilers are using the middle of the ice a lot in transition. And Desharnais is gaining some confidence in terms of his puck handling ability. He's a great shot blocker. He'll step up and fight. It's funny. Here's another thing. The Oilers, because teams are a little bit intimidated by him and there's not as much fighting as there used to be. Like Desharnais had a couple scraps early in the year. There hasn't been a lot of tilts of late.
There has not.
So, but those two guys, I mean, Desharnais, I personally think the Oilers have to sign him. To me, he's a bit like Yanni Hakanpää that Dallas signed. He got 3 years at like 1.5. I don't know if the body of work is quite as good. In Hamlin's case, to me, he's sort of a tweener that's on the team right now. And I think with another year of building strength, he could probably become a full-time, but he's been part of a team, Josh, that's won 15 of the last 18 games as a 4C.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm being a little I want a little, I look at a guy like Carrick in Anaheim and think maybe that's a guy that's got a little bit more size, a little bit more experience. Because when the Oilers are rolling Derek Lorine as their third line center and James Hamlin, they're small down the middle. I like a little bit more size there, but I don't think for 1 second this is the finished product of what we're going to see with the Oilers at forward after the trade deadline. So good point by you on those guys, and 100% Knobloch loves the story of Hamlin. He does. He loves the story of Hamlin, and clearly they respect Desharnais. But I think all three parents are playing way better than they were.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any debate about it. And all you need to do is look at the goal differential over the last 18 games. It's the best in the NHL, and everybody's in a significant upward trajectory, plus minus wise.
Yeah. It stood out to me, and the reason why I asked that is I was at that practice, that morning skate, the Oilers, Knobloch's first one. Like you and Cameron came by separate times to say hi to the MLAC team that I was there with. But I just remember, seeing Desharnais and Knobloch talking kind of after practice, and it was a long conversation. It wasn't a short one, and it looks like it's gone a long way in the terms of him seeing it better and playing better. And obviously Paul Coffey would have a huge part in that too, and whatnot. So it is nice to see. And as everyone knows, the Leafs really wanted him at the start of the year, and they didn't get him, right? Yeah. So it would have been nice to see him on the Leafs.
I think if you'd asked Ken Holland if he could have a do-over in the Lafferty trade and offer a better pick,
he might. Yeah,
he might have done it. Just I you know what? I'm biased in this because I love Lafferty, like I do. And what's the status of Ryan Reeves right now?
He was supposed to be out longer term, but it's more I think week to week. So it's expected to be, I think, month to month. But I think
Lafferty's played way higher up in the lineup in Vancouver than some people thought. I think he's all day he's a third line right wing or a 4C.
Yeah.
Right. Like I like having right shots in the bottom six, because usually there's more left-handed centermen than right-handed centermen that are elite offensive plays. But you got to have at least a couple righties. Like Derek Ryan's at 56%. But Josh, he's 37 and he plays 10 minutes a game. Like they're going to need some help there at some point.
Yeah. But he's doing good. And in that interview Connor had of him and smiling, like that must have been pretty nice for you too. Like I know you talked to Friedman about that on his hit with you the other day, but do you want to elaborate a little bit more of how special that kind of was for you? Because this is another guy that, you saw and believed in at a very young age, and then obviously saw him at the U of A, and where he's come on to here. And, and
what's scary? Yeah. Josh, what's scary? Is the last year he did the Bears was 07-08. He was their third line center.
Yeah.
I would like to tell you at the end of that season, because I joined the Oilers organization August, late August of 2008. And the last year I did the Bears was 07, 08. I'd like to tell you at that time I knew that Derek Ryan was going to play in the NHL. I didn't.
Mhm.
I thought Ian McDonald, who played ahead of him, who was a 6'3" centerman, who was third in the WHL in scoring in his 20-year-old and a third pick overall in WHL Bantam draft. I thought he could play in the A. But then the next year, when I'd go down and see the Bears, because I went to the Bears game Friday night. So did Chris Knobloch, and so did Cam. Cam and me go. It's on our non Oiler nights on Fridays and Saturdays. It's either the Golden Bears or the Oil Kings. We're gonna go.
Yeah.
And so you know, it's hilarious. Like I just think back to at the end of that year. No way did I think that Derek would be in the NHL. Then the next season, when I'd go down there, the next year in 08, 09, by the back half of the season, him and Chad Klassen were lighting it up. And Klassen was a 90-point scorer, like McDonald in the WHL, but Derek was never more than a 60-point guy in the dub. Where I started to become a believer, Rob Dahm was over in Austria. He wasn't coaching Derek. Rob was with a different team, but Derek led the Austrian league, and I was like, this is getting interesting. Then during the 14-15 season, Derek was the Swedish League MVP. And I point blank asked Victor Foss at that point, can this guy play in the NHL? And he said, Bob, that Ryan guy is better than a couple of centers we have here right now. Now that was the end of the 14-15 season. The Oilers had kind of, they were, as it turned out, one of the greatest moments in organizational history, in position to have a top 3 pick. I went into Erie that year thinking we'd be deciding between Dylan Strome and Noah Hannafin. And then the Oilers won the lottery and obviously got McDavid. So the rest is history.
You got that right. Sticking with the Oiler theme here, saw Evander Kane today at a mall. Not going to say where it was because let him have his privacy, but he was with his family. I know he's kind of battling through stuff from what everyone you talk about, but can you kind of talk about, the full picture of Evander Kane from day one signing with the Oilers to where things are at now, and obviously the person he is away from the rink, but talk about the player that he is and the importance he has for this organization going forward. Because I think it's special.
I think Josh. Sorry, I think he's more important come playoff time. Mm-hmm. Like there might be times during the year, like he's dealt with core issues for the last month, and I don't think come playoff time he's going to be on the third line. I think he's going to be second line left wing at that point. But he missed a lot of practices.
Yeah.
Like now he's been back at practice for the last week and a half. I know he's still hurting a little. They need what he brings. I mean, he played a massive part in the playoff runs the last 2 years. There's no question. I mean, he led the playoffs in goal scoring in 21-22. And the degree of physicality that, like, he was third in the league in hits before the game on Saturday night. I feel I got to tell you, I have some empathy for you. On any other team, he'd be on the first unit power play.
Yes.
Not on this team.
No.
You can't argue, right? Like it's been the best power play in the league for the last 4 years. Now this year, I think after last night, it's 5th or 6th overall. I expect it in the top 3 by the end of the year. But how do you argue the prior 4 years has been the first time in 30 years a power play was at 25% or higher for 4 consecutive years. Mm-hmm. And obviously last year set the NHL record. So he's not on the first unit. And then Knobloch cut the amount of penalty killers they use, so he's not killing penalties. Right? So his minutes have decreased, but he's also missed some time in practice. And again, I have a feeling that you're going to see, I mean, the Oilers have got, 20-15-1, so that's 36 games. They've got 46 games left.
Yeah.
I would hazard a guess that at least of half of the remaining games this year, Kane will be back in the top 6. Like, it's inevitable he's going to play higher up in the lineup. He's just too good a player. He's going to get a little bit healthier. And you know what? He's still, he's on pace for almost a 30-goal season. And he doesn't play first unit power play. And he hasn't played in the top 6 for the last month. That's hard to do.
Yes, it is very hard. Yeah. Can you talk about maybe, obviously not to elaborate, obviously his personal life is his personal life, but just the stuff what he's doing in the community? Because I thought it was pretty special today. Usually when you see hockey players of that ilk, out in the public eye, you're kind of getting stopped. And I think there was a lot of respect that people did nod at him, like waved and whatnot. And I didn't know
Yeah.
if I saw him, but it was just kind of nice to see the respect that he's given and he's gotten here, and what he's done, family wise, and raising 3 kids, and has a beautiful I think girlfriend or wife. I don't know if they're married or not, but just what that maybe have done for him, and coming here I think was the right place for all this stuff to happen, in my opinion, but I could be wrong. But
Yeah, there's no question he's been involved and he's been out there, like, and that's part of who he is, and he's
yeah,
got an entrepreneurial spirit. I tend to focus more practice
game.
in games, looking at the numbers, only because there needs to be a little bit of separation from church or state between when you're a broadcaster and the players, right? Like,
Yeah.
which is not to say that you wouldn't have conversations with a manager or coach, but the manager, the relationship with the players for the most part is in the room. That's kind of where we talk to him. So I respect all the stuff that he does. I think it's great, but from my personal perspective, I kind of try to focus more on
Yeah.
just on what I can see, because I like, like I'll tell you a story. The Sedins, okay? I love the Sedins and I love Jerome McGibbon.
Yeah.
I know they played for Vancouver and Calgary. I know at that time Vancouver was certainly better than Edmonton for a number of those years. Calgary is supposed to be the Oilers' biggest rival, but there were stories in Vancouver where the Sedins would go down to the children's hospital and they would never tell the social media, like whatever, the web team, because there wasn't really social. They just went. They
Yes.
just did stuff. And so, it's now we have iPhones now, right? Like, it's a completely different world. Anybody can film anybody at any time. So I just, everybody's got a different approach. Some people are, are more open about being, wanting awareness for things. It's no different than how people deal with things like cancer and illness, mental health. Some people want to share
Mm-hmm.
and other people internalize. And I'd suggest to you that there's no right way or wrong way to do it, right? You know what I mean? Like,
There is. Yeah.
whatever,
Right.
which is, but I will tell you, with age and experience in life comes acceptance
Yeah.
and a realization that, okay, that's the way that family's handling that situation. I totally respect that. Or conversely, that's what that family wants to do. They want to, some families internalize it and don't discuss, sort of if they've got a sick child or something, and others want to share in their journey. And I think both are completely acceptable. So I transition that into talking about, from our perspective, when you're in the media, and even though I technically work for the Oilers Entertainment Group, like, I'm focused on, I try to go to every practice. It's easier now because the show moved.
Yes.
I have the privilege of broadcasting the games and watching the minutes. I tend to have a really good memory, so I can compartmentalize and think of, oh yeah, when was that? So I'll tell you one thing I liked about Kane this year. Okay, one thing I really liked.
Yeah.
The Oilers were in Minnesota. Minnesota was running around. I want Edmonton to add at least one more guy that can take care of business. I think Edmonton misses Costin a little bit. Nurse and Kane are really good players. Darnay is a developing player. Costin provided them a little bit of backup. I'd like Edmonton to have another guy that, if need be, that's why I mentioned a guy like Carrick in Anaheim. Like, that's the type of player that might make sense as an add-on. Might make sense. I don't know if whatever happens. He's also UFA, so maybe he's available. But we're going to go back to Derek Ryan. Brandon Duhaime ran him twice on one shift, and Evander Kane said, "We're going."
Yes.
Okay, that isn't Brandon Duhaime running Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. That's Brandon Duhaime running Derek Ryan, who's like a bottom six guy on the Oilers, and Kane wasn't going to let him do that to one of his teammates. And that was a moment where I was like, "There's a good teammate," which is not because there might be some guys like, look what happened the other night with Bedard.
Yeah. Kurashev going after. Yeah. Going after.
Right? Like, like you gotta, if somebody's cheap shots Connor, the whole team's going in there. But I thought it was awesome that Evander stuck up for Derek in that situation. I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. It definitely was. And again, we'll finish up on this for the Oilers team, and we'll get to some other things around the NHL. But obviously, Elliot Friedman, he's reporting last night on Hockey Night Canada on Saturday headlines that William Nylander is closing in on a 8-year contract extension around $11.5 million. That could be done when this episode gets dropped out Monday, but
well, you could text a guy and find that. I don't know if he's still up.
yeah,
But
exactly. But it sounds like that's going to get done. And your thoughts on that deal, and then what does that deal mean in the comparison for Leon Draisaitl's next contract, Staff?
well, I
Because
mean,
obviously, Draisaitl's a better player than Nylander. So obviously, if he's getting 11.5 million, is Draisaitl getting 14 million on the next?
great question. And like Nylander's become better than I thought he was going to be.
Correct.
Do you agree with that? Would
I
you?
do.
You're
I
a
do.
Leafs fan. Did you
Yeah,
think
I
he
do.
had,
But I'm on the school of also, what do they play 37 games now, or 36 games? And it's weird that,
he's on pace for 115 points,
he
man?
is. And it's crazy that what he's done this season has drove up the number in a good way, but it's also, again, it's another contract that Toronto doesn't win. Like they just saw what, like, if there's no COVID, maybe Hyman scoring a hat trick in San Jose last night for the Leafs instead of him scoring a hat trick in Edmonton against Ottawa. Like that one's still tough as Leaf fans of how Kyle Dubas never figured that one out. And hey, Mike Fuda was on our episode last episode on our podcast, and we still cannot believe that that deal never got done. And it is what it is. And listen to the guys on
Well,
over.
it's only been the best. It's only been the best free agent signing in Oilers history.
Yeah,
Zach Hyman.
no,
It's already been the best free agent signing.
100%, and it will continue to be because there's no this big drop off, in my opinion, in his game. I don't see it ever happening. Like, this guy played on a torn ACL for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the second series they played the Boston Bruins. Like he played, it was like the first or second game. I think it was the second game actually. He tore his ACL and he played 5 more games after that on that. That just says a lot about the person and the
Yeah.
individual and what he brings to the table. So
So they would have 4 guys at like 10.5 to 11.5 million.
they're going to have it. Yeah. Like obviously next year's the McDavid, the Matthews deal kicks in, and then Tavares deals is up
11.
there, and then Marner's going to be due, but all those guys are going to be,
Yeah.
Their whole contract, situation. It's just, again, and that's the thing is, guys you listen to in the industry, it's just shocking because going into the season it was 8.5 million, and then it's like goes from 8.5 million to 11.5 million. It gets done. Another thing that he's doing that other guys aren't doing, so we can give him kudos for that, is he's signing 8 years. Marner didn't do it. Matthews didn't do it twice. So, the fact that he's doing 8 years is also nice. But the fact he's doing 8 years, but he's still getting paid at a really high cap hit because he's usually
He's a heck of an offensive player. He's a real talent, and they got a good team. Like, I mean, I think that obviously they were hoping that Samsonov would have been better for them, they've used a lot of guys that are sort of spend a lot of time in the American League on the back end.
Yeah.
They're going to add a defenseman at some point. As for Draisaitl, stay tuned. Absolutely, he's coming in at a higher price point.
Yeah.
Than Nylander. It's not even and I know right now Nylander's got more points than him, but the 2 highest scoring players in the league since the start of the 16-17 season are Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And the last 2 years in the playoffs, Josh, the best, the most, I'll just say it, the best two, like.
Well, the stats back it up. Everything, the play, the
right.
intensity,
Edmonton didn't lose
through.
They didn't lose to Colorado or Vegas because of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. Like Leon, through the first 2 games of the Vegas series, you could have made a strong argument he'd been the best player in the playoffs the last 2 years. And then, like he'd scored 6 goals in the first 2 games. That's the problem. Like they lost that series because Connor and Leon scored 11 of the 19 goals. All that scoring depth that they had during the season kind of went a little quiet, especially in games 5 and 6 against Vegas. And we're sitting here like it's just crazy. But to answer your question, will it play a factor? I don't know. Is Leon going to get paid? Oh yeah, he's going to get paid, and he deserves to. He's a hell of a player.
The cap will be much higher by the time he gets that too. So that should be noted for sure. All right, let's move over to the Calgary Flames report, sponsored by our friends at Martelou Barbershop in Calgary. Nick and his team do a great job there. They just got the one location.
So you got the Oilers radio guy doing the Flames report.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you some Flames stuff here. Hey, you know what stuff? I got a media credential through the Flames. I have to.
Oh, there you go. Good for you, and
Yeah,
good for them.
exactly. I got my first game in the NHL the other day, so another good thanks to you. I know you've done a lot for me over the years.
I didn't do anything to trust me. If I'd reached out to Peter Hanlon in Calgary, he wouldn't have taken my advice on
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
But what I will tell you is he's always made his general manager available for our show, so we've always been very appreciative of that.
They're great over there, and it was quite the experience. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the press box and maybe the Ed Whalen Media Lounge on January 20th, Stauffer. So I'll be in Calgary. So
okay, well, you can bring your credit card the night before. I'll let you.
yes, exactly. Okay,
all right.
you can sure do that. I'll buy you your $12 Media Lounge meal.
No, we don't. I don't have that on a game night.
No, what do you guys do?
I don't eat. I don't eat after about 2:00 on a game day.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe are you? Well, we'll see what happens after the game.
It obviously isn't helping me look any thinner. I can tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was pretty cool. They did a good job showing me around, and it was pretty cool to be in the locker room and press conference with.
Good stuff.
So, but you know, a tough loss. And more or less, it's a kind of a tease to the next game the Oilers play as you guys fly to Chicago. And you know, Chicago played a really hard, tough game today. And I think one of the players that really stood out to me, and I know you've seen him once here in Edmonton, and that's number 72, Alex Vlasic on the back end for the Blackhawks. He's a 6'6", defenseman. He's a plus 8 on the year, Staff, for a team that is not in the greatest situation. And there's only, I think Dickinson and Bolivier are the only other guys that are plus players on that team. But and I think this guy's a player. It's his first year in the NHL. We'll see. There's a long way to go, but we don't, as you said on previous episodes, like Dale Talon said, you don't know what you have until you have 300-400 games or 200 or 300 games in your belt as an NHL defenseman. But your just thoughts on the Flames here, real quick. I know you guys play them coming up here, but I thought that was a tough loss. Huberdeau's played really good as of late. Same with Kadri, but from what you've seen from the Flames, is there something that kind of stands out to you on maybe the recent player? What you're surprised?
Well, I think Calgary is going to be one of the most, maybe the most single interesting team to watch at the deadline. I really do. Has Conroy not stated, Craig Conroy, their GM, that they're not going to, like, they lost Goodrow for nothing? Did he not say that wouldn't happen to their pending UFAs?
He wouldn't. He did. He did. He wasn't on the. He's not on the road trip with the team now, but Don Maloney is, and Don Maloney did an intermission with Ryan Leslie, and today he said that the players will dictate what we do here. And our GM is still getting to know other GMs around the league, and that's kind of the provided update that the Flames fans thought. But yeah,
I mean, they've hung around. Coleman's had a pretty good run for them as well of late. He'd been going pretty good offensively. Hubert obviously went, 15 games without scoring or something?
Yeah.
Crazy. Like 105 to, or 115. What was it last year? 55. And he's had a tough go. They have talent on that team. Just back to Chicago for a second. They played with like $34 million out of the lineup up front. Like, just off the top of my head, obviously they didn't have Bedard. Hall's done for the year. They go get Beauvillier to replace, Hall or Corey Perry. He gets hurt. Johnson's out of lineup. He makes $5 million. Foligno breaks his finger. He makes $4 million. Hall's making $6 million. They had, like, I'm missing somebody else. They had like 7 forwards out. But it just shows you it's hockey. If you get a few saves and if you commit, and you mentioned Dickinson, he's having a great year for them.
Yeah, he's over 60% on the faceoff dot too today.
Yeah, so I don't know what Kyle Davidson's going to do. Chicago's in a pretty obvious spot here, but my guess is he might be able to get a decent pick for Davidson or for
Dickinson.
And did they not already for Dickinson? Did they not already get a pick for taking his contract in the first place?
They did, yeah.
So could you imagine that? Like, it just shows you things can change. Yes. Korchinski, I actually thought watching the Memorial Cup last year that he'd be back in Seattle this year. He's raw. He can, he's obviously he can skate. He's got offensive upside in his game. but anybody can beat anybody. And Calgary found that out the last two games. Like, I thought Philadelphia played pretty well in Edmonton. Just Connor decided to dominate that game. I thought the Flyers played okay, and they completely outplayed Calgary yesterday. Flames probably should have won today. I watched most of that game against the Hawks. Edmonton, second chance to win 8 straight games. You know who they got the 8th straight victory against last time? Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, in Edmonton. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
But as for Calgary, I think they're going to be one of the most interesting teams. I mean, you know, Lindholm, Hannafin, both pending UFAs. Tanev.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of interest in those 3 players around the league. Maybe they end up re-signing in Calgary and they continue to build a base of a team together.
Yeah, well, and then Friedman did say too that Hannafin, obviously there was negotiations, they broke off, and now they're talking again. So we'll see where that might go. And then obviously some really great news off the ice, but turned into on the ice is Oliver Shillington, who missed all of last year and most of this year, who hasn't played
Yeah.
this year, on the ice with the Wranglers with you know, Mark Pysyk. He was paired with him, and you know, Pysyk's obviously playing in the American Hockey League on a 2-way deal. So yeah, so we'll see what happens with him, and he's a pending UFA if somehow, you know, Shillington gets back in the lineup. He looked pretty good in some of the video there, but
Yeah.
that'll be something to keep an eye on. Is there anything else around the league that's kind of sticking out to you, Stauffer, that you're kind of intrigued about? You know, another tough loss for the Tampa Bay Lightning yesterday, and I wonder if they'll get in. You know, Kucherov is having a great year, but that was a big 7-3 loss against the
The thing about Tampa, whatever way they go, they're all in.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a look, like the Oilers got swept by Tampa and Florida this year. Both teams, Josh, have already traded their 24 and 25 number ones. If Tampa's on the outside looking in, do they move somebody out that can get them back a couple picks? You know, they move that huge
trade for Tanner Jeannot, right?
So. Yeah, well, and I mean Hagel, they gave up Radish and Kachuk to Chicago plus 2 number ones for Hagel. Now Hagel's a hell of a player. He's had a great year. Jeannot has not reclaimed his goal scoring. He had 24 goals a couple of years ago for Nashville. He hasn't got back to that level. He's a pretty good 3rd-line player. Mm-hmm. Could they get a first rounder for him? I'd have to hop on the computer right now and look. Like, he's not signed an extension yet.
He has, yes, he did.
What was it?
Right, let me double check.
You know what? I'm going to check. Good for you.
I'm pretty sure. I was pretty sure he did. I think it was around.
Was he let's just take a look here. Tanner Jeannot. This is
on the fly, but yeah, I want to say he did, but I could be completely wrong. Just because I remember a text message from an NHL player saying that they were really.
Oh, he signed it. No, well, he's got a 2-year deal, but he hasn't signed a longer term deal. Yeah. So he signed the 2-year deal at
2.655.
Yeah. 2.665.
Yeah.
Now that he provides, he's part, you know. I think they were hoping for a little more offense from him. Like, could you get something good for? They could get. I'm going to guarantee you they could get a 1st-round pick for him.
They could. I think they could in the right.
Plus somebody else's prospect. I don't know if they would. I do think Tampa Bay. I'm like you. I'm watching Tampa Bay only because, you know, I think it's
hard to bet Cooper out because of the coaching record he has, but you've also lost like important players like Palat and Killorn here in the last. Yeah,
they got Vasilevsky in goal. They're big on defense. They've got 2 pretty good lines up front. They're a little light in their 3rd and 4th lines.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised if they fall out of it, but if they do, that they're like Vegas and Tampa Bay are pretty committed.
Vegas doesn't worry me though, because I think
no. I'm just saying when they act. That's the point I'm making. Those 2 organizations can be a little ruthless, and I say that with the greatest admiration. Right, like they're in it to win it, and they're relentless in their approach. So I like Calgary is interesting because anytime you get a new general manager in, it's always an interesting situation. Stales in Ottawa. Now Ottawa has signed the base of their team long term.
So he
right?
inherits those great
Like
contracts.
like he's got Kachuk signed long term. He's got Giroux or he's got Stutzla signed long term.
Shabbat, Norris, Batherson.
And then he's got Sanderson.
Yeah.
Those guys are all signed long term. So, like they might be making a couple smaller moves, but Tampa Bay could be a bit of a, if they were to indeed fall out of it, I'd be intrigued to, maybe they just say, screw it. It's not our year. We're not doing anything. Away we go next year.
Yeah.
In Ottawa's case, I can't imagine that. Well, we know the ownership, Michael Adler, was not very happy that they're getting stripped of that number one in 24. It's so do you know how it works?
Yeah, you broke it down with Steve Stales there too. I know he didn't want to.
Yeah, so it's one of the next 3 years they're giving up a number one.
Yeah.
So my guess is at some point they're going to try to reacquire number one from somebody else. That would be the lot. Like if I'm thinking that probably makes the most sense. So how do they make that happen? I don't know. And in Tampa's case, they've been in and in and in. If they somehow end up out of it, if they think they're out of it, do I think it's possible they can make a play to get a pick back? Yeah, I do. But I just don't think 6 weeks from now they're going to be out of it.
Yeah.
Like I think they're going to be in it. Just they're too good in goal, and they've got some studs up front. They've got a huge defense. I think they'll find a way to get back in it.
What about they'll finish up on this? The LA Kings, obviously, you talk very highly of Todd McCullough and what they're doing there, but another. I think they won this afternoon. I believe I can't remember. I know they played Washington. Did they win?
They lost 4-3.
Did they lose 4? Okay, sorry. They were up, I think, in that game at one point.
It was a close game. Yeah.
So obviously, tough loss there. The Oilers are gaining ground on them. And I do believe what you said with Friedman on your hit last week is that I don't think the Oilers are looking at the wild card. They're looking up further up the standings.
Yeah. They're going to try to get to 50 wins.
Yeah. Quick rip on the LA Kings. Finish out on this, where they're at, and what do you think they need to do to get better here?
I'm going to ask you a question. Who won the trade? Winnipeg or LA?
I Winnipeg all day long. When you guys played them the other night, I was, it was me having to go look for Pierre-Luc Dubois instead of me noticing him through the game of the commentators kind of pointing out plays that he did. So I don't know if that's a product of a guy who just got signed and he knows he's got paid, or is that just?
Yeah, I love Velarde. You know that because you've heard over the years. Yes. I love Velarde. And I'm just looking at what Kevin Cheveldayoff was able to do there and add some more depth to their forward units. And I mean, obviously Winnipeg's a little bit of a surprise that they're this good. By the way, just, the Oilers are 15-3 in the last 18. It's the best record in the league since November 24th. They won on the road in Winnipeg, coming from behind in the third period, and they won on the road at MSG against the Rangers. Those are the top two teams in the league.
Yeah.
And Edmonton won on the road in their barns when trailing going into the third period. The thing about LA is I was looking at Kopitar and Deneau down the middle, and then they have Byfield. And I like Byfield a lot. He'll eventually play center, I think, in 3 or 4 years, maybe when Kopi's done.
Yeah.
I thought they had more depth than Edmonton further down. As it turned out, the Oilers won 6. And
I think in LA, I think we thought Alex Turcotte was going to be more of a player than what he has been.
Right? Yeah, he got derailed from injuries.
Yeah.
Right. That's a 5th overall pick. So now the guy they have, Josh, is Brant Clark. And at some point, I think he's better than Spence, who's on their back end.
Yeah.
But 100%, I think the Dubois we've seen through the first 35, 38 games this year, I think the Kings were hoping for more. So it hasn't happened yet. It doesn't mean he isn't going to be better as the season goes on.
Yeah. Well, that's one for sure. Another guy, I wonder if they didn't want to get rid of. Obviously, I think it was in the Fiala trade, but Brock Favors turned out to be a hell of a defenseman, and it probably
Bill Guerin's a good GM.
He is.
So Bill's a good GM. They made some. They lack skill. That's why. So I think Evanson's a good coach. I think Minnesota lacks a little bit of skill. They're hard to play against. Edmonton's had challenges going in there and playing. That was a good trade.
Yeah.
Favors, you could argue Favors their best defenseman. You do that trade at right? You do that trade.
Yep. Yeah, 30 minutes a night, and there's not too many. As Mike Food has said, there might not be too many number one defensemen, but Brock Faber might be one of them right
He
now.
might be
Yeah,
pretty tough to trade.
yeah.
So it's going to be interesting here in the next few weeks, right? Because the Oilers, Holloway's going down. He's going to play a little bit of center once they actually play some games. Broberg's played terrifically over the last few games. I like, to me, I would think that Broberg, Holloway, and Lavoie have to graduate on the Oilers roster next year, just from a cap perspective, and they're all big. They're all bigger bodies. But you know, I'm going to be very interested to see what ultimately happens between now and the deadline to see what kind of additions Edmonton. And that's the other thing you got to factor is, the teams look at bringing in 3 or 4 new players and pushing to get themselves over the top.
Yep.
It should be a good next couple months.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's finish up on that. Staff, enjoy the next several games here. We'll see you in Calgary on the 20th.
Thanks for the warning.
And exactly, you're very welcome. So, all the best to you. Happy New Year to you and your family, and everyone in your circle there, and continued success along the way here. So, thanks, Staff, for joining us.
Josh, stay positive.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, there you go, my man. Awesome stuff. Okay.